Vesna Vulovic's story for me is just one of the most incredible survival stories, if in fact not the most impressive, that we have here at Guinness World Records.
What does it mean to fall from the sky when death feels certain but life refuses to let go? It begins with a young woman named Vesna Vulovic, a flight attendant in her early 20s, full of energy and hope, stepping onto a plane that should have been just another normal journey. Yet fate had written a darker plan, one that would etch her name into history forever. Vesna was working on JAT Flight 367, a routine passenger flight traveling from Copenhagen to Belgrade in January of 1972. The plane was a McDonnell Douglas DC-9, and on board were more than 24 passengers and crew, all expecting an ordinary flight across the sky. Vesna had been mistakenly scheduled for this flight. Her name was confused with another attendant named Vesna, and so she boarded, unaware that this mistake would make her the center of one of the most impossible survival stories ever recorded. As the jet lifted into the cold winter air, nothing seemed unusual. Passengers chatted, the crew performed their duties, and Vesna, in her crisp uniform, carried the grace and warmth that made her beloved among her colleagues. But somewhere in the shadows of that day, a plan of destruction was already set in motion. Unknown to the people inside, a suitcase bomb had been planted in the luggage hold. It was tied to a terrorist attack, meant to bring down the plane and erase every soul on board. Minutes into the flight, as the jet cruised at 33,000 feet, silence turned into terror. An explosion shattered the cabin with brutal force. The fuselage broke apart in midair, metal tearing, bodies thrown, and in seconds, the aircraft disintegrated into pieces, scattering across the skies of Czechoslovakia. Imagine the air, cold and violent, tearing at your lungs, the roar of destruction louder than anything your mind can process. Passengers were instantly sucked out, falling helplessly through the clouds. No one survives this. No one should survive this. Yet in the chaos, there was Vesna. She was trapped in the fuselage of the tail section, her body pinned by a food cart. Instead of being ejected into open air, her body remained inside the wreckage as it spiraled downward at impossible speed, 33,000 feet, more than 6 miles above the earth. To fall from this height is to be sentenced to death. The ground doesn't forgive, the air doesn't slow you, the earth waits with merciless finality, and yet, somehow, the wreckage containing Vesna struck a snow-covered forested hillside, the impact softened slightly by trees and the sloping terrain. The crash destroyed nearly everything, but against all odds, Vesna was alive. When rescuers arrived, they found bodies scattered across the wreckage, lifeless and broken. And then, miraculously, this young woman, unconscious, mangled, but breathing. Her skull was fractured, both legs were broken, her pelvis was crushed, and several ribs were shattered. Blood soaked her uniform, and her heart barely clung to its rhythm. Yet her body refused to surrender. Doctors later said that her survival was not just luck, it was a terrifying combination of physics and fate. Being trapped inside the fuselage gave her some protection. The snow and trees absorbed part of the impact, and most strangely, her low blood pressure may have caused her to lose consciousness before her heart could explode from the shock of the fall. She should have been dead instantly. Instead, she became the sole survivor of the disaster. Think about it, 33,000 feet, not a single parachute, and she lives. Vesna awoke days later in a hospital bed, surrounded by confused doctors and horrified relatives. She had no memory of the explosion, no memory of falling, no memory of the impact. The last thing she remembered was greeting passengers before the takeoff, and the next memory was waking up in pain, her body broken, but her mind still alive. She later learned that 27 people had died that day. She was the only one spared. But the story didn't end with survival. For months, Vesna's life was a battlefield of surgeries, recovery, and unbearable pain. Her broken bones were reconstructed, her skull fracture treated, her body slowly pieced back together by relentless doctors. She spent weeks paralyzed, unable to move, chained to the hospital bed. She suffered from amnesia, unable to fully recall the hours before the crash, as if her mind had sealed away the nightmare to protect her. Reporters swarmed, calling her the miracle girl, the woman who cheated death. But was it a miracle, or just a cruel twist of fate. Vesna herself said she never saw it as luck. She believed she survived because she was meant to continue living, even if she could never explain why. Years later, Guinness World Records confirmed her story. She officially holds the record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute, 33,130 feet, a height at which the air itself is unbreathable. And yet she lived to tell the tale. But there was something darker hidden in her survival. The crash itself was never fully solved. Investigators believed a terrorist bomb was responsible, linked to a group targeting flights at the time, but evidence was incomplete, and theories spread that maybe it was not a bomb but a mid-air shoot down by mistake. Conspiracies surrounded her story for decades. Some even claimed her survival was exaggerated, that she didn't fall from that height at all. But no matter what theories existed, no one could erase the truth. She was found alive in the wreckage while everyone else was gone. Vesna's survival made her famous, but it also became a burden. She lived with survivor's guilt, haunted by the fact that she was the only one left. The families of the victims saw her survival as strange, almost unfair, and Vesna herself admitted she thought about it constantly. Why me? Why did I live when everyone else died? As the years went on, she continued working with Jet Airways for a time, though never as a flight attendant again. She became a symbol of endurance, yet behind her smile was a weight she never fully escaped. Despite her injuries, she lived a long life, speaking occasionally about her survival, but never in sensational tones. To her, it was just what happened. She didn't see herself as a hero or even as special. She was just the girl who fell and survived. Vesna Vulovic died in 2016 at the age of 66 in her apartment in Belgrade. She had lived with the memory of that impossible fall for more than 4 decades. The world remembers her not only as the woman who holds a record no one wants, but as a living reminder that sometimes, even when death is absolute and certain, life can still win. So I'll ask you again, what does it mean to fall from the sky when death feels certain, but life refuses to let go? Because Vesna's story proves something terrifying and beautiful at once. That survival is not always about strength or choice or even hope. Sometimes it's about the mysterious, unexplainable decision of life itself to keep you here when everything else says you should be gone.